Hey, fellow superhero cinephiles. Did you know that almost 30% of adults say they haven't read a book in the past year? The primary reason why is a lack of time. Well, Audible's here to help with the gift of found time. Thanks to Audible, you can listen to audiobooks like Marvel Comics, The Untold Story, or Slugfest, inside the epic 50-year battle between Marvel and DC. Read up on the history of superheroes in comics and movies with Grant Morrison's Super Gods. You can also check out Vanguard, my original superhero novel series, or try The Vril Agenda or The Adventures of Fortune McCall, both of which were written by our dearly departed host emeritus, Derek Ferguson. Whatever you're looking for, Audible has thousands of titles that you can consume while commuting, exercising, cooking, or just relaxing at home. And not only audiobooks, an Audible membership also gives you access to tons of content like podcasts, theatrical performances, and exclusive Audible originals that you won't find anywhere else. To give you a taste of what you can get, Audible has partnered with this show to provide listeners with a free 30-day trial. All you have to do is go to audibletrial.com/supercinemapod, and with your free trial, you get one free audiobook and 2 free Audible originals. In fact, you get to keep those titles even if you cancel before the trial is over. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to audibletrial.com/supercinemapod and start your free trial today.
Call him the Batman.
Oh, Batman. Yeah, no, I'm glad that a half an hour of research pulled up the name I could have guessed in 2 seconds.
I've read rumors about a supernatural bat creature in Gotham, but I assumed it was an urban legend or that he was a mutant like us.
That guy was definitely human. And I think his supernatural powers are just his gadgets.
We already know what he is.
He's awesome!
Unless he's a bad guy.
That'd make him like 40% less awesome.
No one knows his motives, but it does appear that he only attacks criminals, especially this clown guy.
So he wears a Dracula costume and punches clowns. Who cares? The dirtbag stole my side.
Dracula costume? What kind of Dracula movies are you watching?
Look, all I'm saying is, ever since Shredder stole the ooze from TCRI and came to Gotham, we know he's been working with a new partner, right? It's gotta be this bat creep.
I'm not so sure. The way he fought, avoiding lethal blows, he wanted to figure us out. Like a detective.
Okay, bros. I broke it down. Awesome. Little bat throwing things, cool car, sweet bat hat. Not awesome, kicked our butts, maybe evil, mean voice.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and I'm here with a new guest today, who's someone I've known for a long time, back in another guy from my fan fiction days, and that's David Ellis. Dave, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm fine. Like I was just saying off air, I managed to survive the heat for another day, and it's now my weekend, so that's cool. I do remember those heady days back in the 2000s of writing superhero fan fiction, and honestly, that's something that I still do. But I remember back when we were, all in that group. Back in the days of what was it called at the time? Yahoo Clubs or something, or Yahoo Groups?
Yahoo Groups, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that was.
Yeah, and it was still up until I think it was like a few months ago. They finally closed it down.
Yeah. It was kind of amazing.
So anyway, why don't you take a few minutes and tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I'm David Ellis. I am I'm a writer. Recently, within this past year, I became a voice actor. I do stuff like that. I do lots of role playing and stuff like that. But as far as the stuff that I've, as far as the voice acting, like I'm still kind of in the amateur phase because I am a member of an audio drama group called 8TW, which is basically Akadeka Ganagon Theater Works. And that was started by a mutual friend of myself and Perry, who is Tom DJ, and who's been on a past episode of this show. And he's basically the creative director of that. He got the idea of, during this quarantine pandemic sort of thing, to finally do the thing that he's wanted to do for, since he was a kid, which is audio dramas and radio dramas, stuff like that. So how I got into that was actually a funny story, because it happened entirely by accident. Because another one of Tom's projects that he had done recently was this Justice League draft for a podcast on the Two True Freaks network.
That's right. Yeah, I took part in that as well.
Yeah. And so I took part in that, and I was doing I was doing my own like audio recordings of myself, who I would cast in a football draft sort of thing for the Justice League. And I came up and I did characters like Captain Atom. I did like Black Canary. I did a few off the wall ones like Plastic Man from DC's Tangent, a number of different stuff. And so I think that was the reason that this accident happened. But I ended up receiving a message over Facebook Messenger from Tom DJ, and he was asking me, or his question was, it was like, where I'm still looking for your I'm still looking for your auditions, or I'm still waiting for auditions for something. And I'm like, auditions for what? And he was like, oh, that's right, I'm sorry, this was a mistell, I meant to send this to someone else. And I was like, okay, great, what is it you're talking about? Because what? And so it turned out that he was trying to get this audio drama group going, so that he can do a Strangers in Paradise audio drama based on Terry Moore's comic book series.
Oh, wow.
Because he had gotten the go-ahead from Terry Moore himself. And I was like, wait, what? You're doing what? And it turned out that the role of David Chin was up. He was still looking he was still casting for that. So I sent an audition, which I'm sure was absolutely horrible. And but yeah, audio, like voice acting was something that I'd been wanting to do for years, and I'd done like a little bit on an amateur basis, like, even circling back to the fan fiction thing there. Tom DJ had this podcast in the 2000s called Other People's Toys.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that.
It was about our little sector of the fanfic community, where we were putting out fan fiction in the form of, kind of mimicking the form of like a publishing schedule, monthly installments and stuff like that. So so I would actually do like these like commercials for that, hyping my own, group, my own corner of that universe. So I had like a little bit of voice acting interest and voice acting. I had a little bit of experience doing that, and so I was like, okay, I want to send you like I just basically like sent some auditions, and I just tried to get myself as like insinuated into AGW as I could. And I didn't get the part of David at first, but they had a few other side projects like Public Domain Comic Book Theater, which is basically exactly what it sounds like, where where they basically take comic books that are from like the 50s and 60s and before, that are in the public domain,
Right.
and like adapt them into brief audio drama scripts. And so they were looking for people to fill various utility roles in that. So I'm like, yeah, I can be that kind of actor. I can definitely be the additional voices that you would see in the credits of an audio of like, like say, if you're like watching a cartoon or some kind of feature with voice acting, and you see like additional voices, I'm like, I can be those additional voices. So I ended up getting cast as like various like cops and sheriffs and firefighters and ghosts and stuff like that. And I ended up, being the lead in a couple of those and whatever. And then for the second season of Strangers in Paradise, the role of David once again became available because that actor, ended up parting ways due to scheduling and
Mhm.
all that. And so yeah, they were then looking for a new David, and I'm like, well, I was up for that before. So I ended up in a like live audition with like two other actors, who were also up for David. And we were all on the same Skype call. And we were just going through the script and acting out. And I must have impressed them, because very shortly after that audition ended, I was cast, and I am currently the voice of David, who is one of the leads in Strangers in Paradise. And yeah, so and also in that group, I am I'm writing various things. Like I've written a script or two for Public Domain Comic Theater. I've done their VHS box theater thing, where they basically, the idea behind that is like adapting, well, not so much like adapting old B movies, but kind of the vague idea of them that was that the covers and back covers of the VHS or DVDs advertised,
Mhm.
because they're like a lot of B movies that, sound really cool if you like read the back of the DVD or the VHS box. You're like, oh wait, I can't wait to see that. And then the movie's absolute garbage. So
Mhm.
we're just
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of taking the idea of like what was described on the box itself, and we're like, okay, we're just going to make our own script based on that
Mhm.
and just go in our own direction. And the thing I did was Death Code Ninja, which Tom had he posted a bunch of different like B movie VHS boxes, wanting to see if any of us were interested in that particular project idea. And I immediately saw that Death Code Ninja was one of them. It's like an 80s B movie with ninjas in it. I'm like, I know exactly what I want to do with that, and it is going to be a loving and completely bonkers like tribute to 80s ninja movies.
Mhm.
And like within about a half hour, I had emailed him like the outline to what I wanted Death Code Ninja to be. And he's like, okay, I guess we're doing this then, all right. And so I got working on the script. And he and the rest of the cast liked it enough that I'm now following it up with a follow-up series called Foxes, which is an acronym and is basically the continuing adventures of some characters that I had created for Death Code Ninja. And
Mhm.
it's just kind of like spinning them off into their own female fronted action martial arts movie franchise. And the fact that I'm doing this in an audio drama is kind of a creative exercise in itself, because
Mhm.
I can't show you the action scene. I
Right.
could just basically like in the script I put sounds of punching and kicking and grunting and stuff like that. But it's still, but I still like getting creative with the basic setups for the scenes. And then
Mhm.
as we're acting, as we go through the voice recording, there ends up being there ends up being like this like block of time that we set up for like, okay, so we want you all to just start grunting and start doing like all kinds of martial arts sounds, like yeah, go for the jaw, that all that kind of thing. And it is an absolute blast. I love working with these people. It's fun. They have such a fun sense of humor. And like being in an audio recording is kind like is basically like herding cats. So
Mhm.
So people like, Tom, or, Gene Hendricks, or some of the others who are like voice directing at any given time, like I don't envy them, because like getting us to stay focused is kind of amazing.
Right.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and anybody who's interested in that bit of insanity can check out 8tw.ninja. That is that is the actual website of it.
Mhm.
And we've got a bunch of different audio dramas, and we've got like the next year or two, we've got a bunch of stuff in the pike. Something we're most recently doing is an audio drama of Trekker, a Ron Randall comic series that's been going since the 80s.
Mhm.
We've done like the first few episodes of that, and in that I play the main character's Uncle Alex, who's like a grizzly. I'm sorry, it's like a grizzled veteran police lieutenant who sounds kind of like this. He's kind of basically the Jim Gordon of that franchise. So
Mhm.
I end up talking like this and just sounding very worn out, but also concerned for my niece, who's this bounty hunter, whose ways I don't approve of, but just be careful, Mercy, that kind of thing. So,
Right. Right. Wow, really
uh,
cool. So, how are those things being released? Are they being released like in podcast form? Are they being released as audiobooks? How are they releasing those?
they're being released like on the kind of a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Mhm.
When they're like their first run is on the Two True Freaks network, which is
Mhm.
twotruefreaks.com, or I think it's also like I think they might also have like an audio feed, like maybe on like Apple Podcasts or something like that.
Right. Right.
But yeah, if you go to like twotruefreaks.com, you'll see
Mhm.
like the different podcasts that they put out on a regular basis, and you'll find episodes that we release of ATW productions, like Strangers in Paradise and Trekker
Mhm.
and Public Domain Comic Theater. Like we put out stuff fairly regularly. And also we have a I believe it's a coffee page, and like you'll find it on the atw.ninja website, which is basically kind of our blog spot that's like
Right.
hyping everything that we're
Mhm.
doing. And it's basically like we will put like collections of some of our stuff in like $5 downloads, so that's like a little bit of money coming our way. And I think we also
Right.
have a Patreon that we're trying to get set up. So we're trying to move slowly but surely toward like some kind of monetization, some kind of like
Mhm.
income
Mhm.
for what we do,
Right.
but
Oh, awesome. And so has Terry Moore talked to you at all about? Have you heard about any feedback from him about your performance?
uh I don't think I've heard from him specifically on my performance, but he's been like just in general a really big fan of what we've been doing. And also Ron Randall has likewise been really effusive in his
Mhm.
praise for what we've been doing. In fact, trying to remember has sat in on our recording. I think, but I know that Ron Randall definitely was, and Randall definitely like. I think he even voiced a minor character in the Trucker audio drama. So there's that. But yeah. So yeah, like basically what we try to do is we try and get the approval of whoever it is that we're working with. And
Right.
currently we're a tiny outfit, so we try and go for like the either the things that are in the public domain, or things that are like small press
Mhm.
creations, where we'd have like where it's like maybe like one person who's making the decision, one or two people is making the decisions on that, and that's like the creator, or like maybe just one or two people who's like involved in that. So that's like
Right.
so we don't have to go through a whole bunch of like corporations or whatever
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
get our to like get approval for what we're doing. One of the things that we tried, like Tom is a like he's got a bunch of like comic book creators who are friends of his, including Jimmy Palmiotti. And
Mhm.
at one point he was like, "So, are there any of your creations that we could do audio dramas on?" And Palmiotti was, immediately was like, "Do the Pro." And for those who aren't familiar, that is a black comedy about a prostitute who obtains superpowers and then is recruited for this like off-brand Justice League, and it is just basically this like scathing and absolutely vulgar like satire of superhero conventions. And like for about a year we were like waiting for, like, we had like, needless to say, we had Palmiotti's approval, and we were just waiting for Garth Ennis, who wrote the thing, to give his approval. And then, like, more recently, Garth, I think we finally heard from Garth, and he was just like, "Nah." And then we're like, "Okay, well, I guess we don't have to wait on that approval." So yeah, on to other things. And
Right.
but yeah, we've got a few other things that we're like trying to get, that we're like waiting on approval on, or like we're kind of in early talks. And there's one comic book creator who's like, not no, but give me 6 months for things to calm down, and then I'll
Right,
give
right,
you
right,
an
right,
answer,
right,
that
right.
sort of thing.
Okay, cool. Wow. So it
That's
sounds
it.
like you guys are doing really interesting things over there. I had no idea. I knew Tom was doing some audio drama stuff, but I remember you mentioned something about that, but I didn't know how extensive it had gotten. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I'd honestly like I was honestly kind of surprised that it wasn't mentioned in any kind of detail that I can remember, like when he appeared on a previous episode, because that's like one of his favorite things that he's doing.
I
So
think that probably had a lot to do just with the circumstances, because he was on to talk about that. It was right after Derek had passed away, so he came on to talk about that. So I think he was
that's
kind of
true.
pretty distracted at that time.
Makes sense. Okay.
But anyway, so today we're talking about a movie you picked out, and I remember watching this back when it first came out. I think I bought it like right away when it came out on iTunes, and that is Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which came out in 2019. Animated movie directed by Jake Castorena, and it's a joint production between Warner Brothers Animation and Nickelodeon.
Mm-hmm.
So let's jump right into it. Before we talk about the movie, what's your history with? Were you a big Batman fan or a big TMNT fan going into this?
Yes.
Or both?
The correct answer is yes, because I've been fans of the both of them since I was a kid. Like some of my earliest memories were of seeing Batman on Super Friends in the 80s, and like reruns of the Adam West Batman TV show. And so I knew who Batman was very early. And long before Kevin Conroy became like the accepted voice for him, or long before people just started agreeing that this is what he sounded like. Batman just basically sounded like a grade school or middle school teacher who was really trying to get people, was really trying to get kids interested in science. Like he sounded like that kind of guy.
Right, yeah.
And so yeah, I was always, so yeah, like I was into Batman and Robin from an early age. And just like alongside the whole Super Friends and the whole like Superman, who was for me simultaneously George Reeves and Christopher Reeve. And in fact I think, and honestly, he was more George Reeves to me, for the simple reason that I saw more that, like I was regularly watching the old TV show that I didn't realize was from the 50s,
Right.
because I grew up in Dallas and Fort Worth, and they have like and like at least since the 80s, and probably before that, they've had like entire TV stations that were just dedicated to like syndicated programming. So I would see TV shows from all different eras and have no concept that they came from like different decades. and also I was seeing most of them on a small black and white TV in my room that had to have been from the 50s. So most things that I watched were in black and white. So I had no concept of like what reruns were for the longest time. And as far as the Turtles, my first uh, exposure to them, I distinctly remember this was in the late 80s, like very shortly before the toy line came out. There was this show on there was this like commercial on TV that was like hyping the toy line, and also and also had like clips from the cartoon, and it was just the weirdest thing that I had ever seen, because it was like these are turtles, they live in a sewer, they eat pizza, they are totally radical, they ride skateboard. Like I don't recall the exact wording was, other than they eat pizza, and like basically that inflection. And then I think my brother and I were like watching TV with like the babysitter we had at the time, and I was just looking at that. I was just like, and the babysitter was saying what I think we were all thinking, which is, what are they going to come up with next? Like we just all thought this was like completely stupid looking, and it was basically out of sight, out of mind as soon as that commercial ended. And then like sometime later, the toy line started being advertised in commercials, and I'm like, oh, there's that. Okay, I guess this is still something that's happening. It's still just as weird. I don't get it. Also, like I don't even know if I even wondered why so much of the commercial was animated, because, well, that was part of the experience of toy commercials, back in the 80s, where like there would be footage of kids playing with the toys. There would be footage from there would be like animated footage of the toys in action, and or both. I mean, like some commercials had both. Some of them had one or the other. Some of the animation was like made up entirely for a commercial. Some of it was like footage from a commercial, from a cartoon that existed.
Right.
And
yeah,
so
that was
forth.
that was the big thing that a lot of cartoons and a lot of toy lines were doing back in the 80s, because I think that was when the restrictions on product placement and all that had gotten kind of loosened, so then they were able to basically create toy lines that create these animated series that were just created for the toy line. That was how Master of the Universe was the first one of those, I believe.
Oh yeah, and that just like snowballed all throughout the 80s.
Yeah,
meaning it was a great time to be a kid, because there was just all this like awesome like toys and cartoons, and not even much concept that the cartoons were like just to sell the toys, and that were just basically being manipulated by marketing. It's just like, I want that cool thing, and it's on TV, and I'm also seeing it in the toys, and I want those toys. And it's just, and then like playing with the toys, and just kind of like, and for me at least, not having very many toys, and just basically having like hand-me-down toys from cousins and something like that, and just like assembling this hodgepodge of like bizarre of like just these bizarre adventures that like utilized whatever was at hand. And I will say this, like those pretend sessions that I had with my toys had like commercials in them. They actually had commercial breaks, because that was part of the experience for me. Because like the interest, because like the cartoons would like be at their most exciting right before a commercial break. So commercials were part of the experience. So I would actually factor in commercial breaks and act those out too.
I remember acting out opening credits myself when I did that when I was a kid.
So did I. Yes, because those were part of the experience. And of course, they would be the most, they would be the best animated parts of the shows, because they actually put the time and the money into that animation, and then that would be the animation that we would then convince ourselves was carried through the entire show.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
and then, of course, as once we got older, we then, watch those shows again and be like, what?
Yeah. And you realize how many sequences they reused and over again.
Yeah, it's like, wait, was the animation that bad or cheap or sloppy the entire time? I don't remember that. And then, you look back and it's like, oh, that was just the animation in the opening credits. That's just what we transposed on everything. Okay, that makes sense now. So it is, so like, just, is kind of the experience of being an 80s kid. And then like, and I saw so many of those Turtles toy commercials that after a while, like seeing so much of the animation, I'm like, so is there an actual like cartoon that's happening? Like, am I just missing it? Is it coming on like in the morning when I've already gone off to school? Is it happening then? According to the TV guide, no. So what is this? And then like I was then blindsided at one point by the premiere of the cartoon, like in the afternoon after I got home from school, and I'm like, this happened? What?
Yeah, the Netflix series, The Toys That Made Us, they did one on Ninja Turtles, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, like they said that there was some scheduling difficulties, and that's why the commercials actually ended up coming out before the show actually premiered, because they had trouble finding a network or something like that, I believe it was.
Yeah, they had the hardest time finding any executives that were interested, any funding for the toy line, any toy lines that wanted to pick this up, anything at all. Like Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, who created the property, they had once once they debuted their comic series in 1984, it got surprisingly popular in ways that they could not have foreseen, to the point that the second issue of their comic series ended on a specific line of dialogue, which was one of the turtles saying, well, it worked. And that was their commentary on their unexpected success, because they were trying to, they had this like really crazy idea, and like getting anybody to pay attention to it was an uphill battle, but then they were surprised by the attention that it actually got. And then it then caused them to basically like have to fend off Hollywood marketing executives, just fend them off with a chair and a whip,
right.
Just be like, no, not that, no, not you either, that's way too scuzzy, no, not interested in that either. And just kind of go through that. And then finally there was this there's this one guy, I believe his name was Mark Friedman, who's an advertising guy, and they're like, okay, we've gone through so many of you at this point, we're willing to actually work with you if you can give us results on a very short time frame.
Right.
And so he had to he just had to call every he had to call every contact he had. He had to knock on every door he could find, and then just try and sell this insane property to people. And then Playmates Toys was the only one that actually bought it, because they were this doll company that was desperately trying to do something different. And they were we'll try this, sure.
Yeah, that was I got to rewatch that episode again. That was a really good episode that the Toys That Made Us did about that. But anyway, so about this movie was actually based on a comic book that was done by James Tynion IV and Freddie Williams II. Did you ever read the comic that it was based on?
I think I ended up reading. Let's see. I did end up I managed to track down an issue at one point, and then much later I was finally able to read the whole thing. And they had a few different series of that because it was popular,
right?
And one of those they actually kind of just went feet first into the whole Elseworlds thing, and even had this like alternate dimension where like Bruce Wayne was orphaned, and like he was raised by Splinter alongside the Teenage Mutant Ninja
Oh,
Turtles.
okay.
It was so bizarre, but it was like really cool. And like and um one of the mini series that they did with the Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like I believe it actually ended with this like splash page of like various Gotham villains being mutated into animal hybrids by
Mhm.
mutagen, and then they actually expanded upon that for this animated movie, which I enjoyed the hell out of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they even did. There's one that was based on the animated series version of Batman and the
They basically
Nickelodeon
did.
cartoon one.
Yeah, they did a miniseries that was basically a fusion of Batman the Animated Series along with the 2012 uh, uh,
Right.
CGI animated series, and those two animated styles actually fit together a lot better than I would have expected. But yeah, like they were both kind of loose and cartoony enough that they could actually kind of fused together with like they were exaggerated enough that it was like, okay, I guess this works, sure.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't expect that just looking from the TV shows, but just looking at, I haven't read that miniseries, but just looking at the artwork and the preview pages on Comixology, it's a
Mhm.
really nice style. It looks like it really worked. Looks like it would really work for this series.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I read like a little bit of that, and it definitely seemed like it was a lot of fun, and it was definitely a pretty good use of uh both shows, especially with the idea of the turtles taking on Clayface. I mean, that ended up being a really fun sequence.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember. I'm not sure if I read the whole thing. I remember reading at least some of this comic book,
Mhm.
but it was a while ago, so I'm not really very. I don't remember
Yeah,
much about it.
yeah.
But what were your thoughts watching this movie?
Watching the movie, yeah, like you, I bought it immediately when it came out. I bought the DVD Blu-ray copy,
Mhm.
and in fact, to prep for this earlier in the week, I brought out the uh, I brought out that Blu-ray version again, and I watched that, and yeah, I like it was basically as fun as I was hoping this kind of crossover would be, and
Mhm.
like you can definitely tell that the people making it are like really big Turtles fans who were just basically like set loose by the opportunity to actually do Turtles.
Mhm.
Almost it seemed like almost every frame was like a love letter to various aspects of the different Turtles franchises, to the point where like where like they were it was almost like, how do I put it? It was almost like the Batman portion of it was almost sidelined in a do we have to do Batman sort of way.
Mhm.
It's like, do we have to bring this guy into it? I mean, we're having so much fun with the Turtles, do we have to? But honestly though, it like they just had like the right amount of fun that I would hope for with this kind of thing, because what they ended up doing was they leaned into all the different ways that the Batman franchise is like incredibly fun and bizarre,
Mhm.
because a lot of recent depictions of Batman have been like leaning on the dark and gritty
Right,
and
right.
violent, and this is a very dark journey, and
Mhm.
this and like you're not going to have any fun at all, and you're going to have exactly as much fun as Batman is having, which is none. And it's and all that, and then like this movie is like, okay, so let me get this straight. There's a villain named the Penguin who's wearing a tuxedo. He has all kinds of umbrellas that do various like gags, and he has a bunch of like thug henchmen, and I love this touch that the character designers like had the henchmen all wear like these t-shirts with the tuxedo design on it. Like
Right.
they were all wearing that, and I'm like, that is a brilliant touch, and I love this.
Mhm.
And of course they had Michelangelo as the exact person who would notice all this and be like, this is amazing, I want to live here,
Mhm.
not understanding how, like, dark and violent and tragic, day-to-day life in Gotham is. He's just a tourist having a blast. He's like, this is awesome, bro.
Now, for me, I thought it was kind of funny that you mentioned that you thought they were almost felt like sideline, like the Batman stuff was sideline. I felt like it was a decent balance of both because there's lots of references to a lot of Batman stuff I picked up, like
Fair enough. Yeah.
references to stuff in the animated series. Even like the whole look of Batman, it's very much evocative of like the Neil Adams style or the
I
Brave
did
and the Bold
notice.
one.
I did notice that. Yeah.
And then like even when Batgirl takes the selfie at the end, that was a direct reference to Cameron Stewart's
Right.
Batgirl run at the time. So
I did notice those, and yeah, I think the thinking on the way
plus
they
the
depict.
airship too was also something that jumped out at me because that was something that was the big aesthetic of the animated series with the whole airship
Yes.
thing.
Yeah, they had so much fun with that. They're
Mhm.
like, yeah, we're just going to bring in the blimps from the animated series, and of course we're going to have the turtles comment on that because again, they're not beholden to the fact that this is supposed to be like dark and serious. Michelangelo is going to be like, I wonder what those are for.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, and like toward the end of the movie, it comes back and actually has a use.
Yeah.
And yeah, the I did notice that it was like 70s Neil Adams
Mhm.
Batman, or like basically what he looked like throughout the 80s. So they're like, well, the Turtles is an 80s property, and
Mhm.
so if we're gonna pair him up with Batman, he's gonna look like he did in the 80s. So
Yeah.
you know.
One of the things that really struck me, and I didn't realize it, I don't know, because it'd been a while since I've watched it. I watched it when it first came out, and then I hadn't watched it again until last night to
Mhm.
prepare for this episode. But the thing that jumped out at me right from the start, that I guess maybe I was maybe a little bit sleepy the first time I watched it or whatever, but stuff that just didn't, I wasn't paying as much attention to it the first time around. But this time around, like the opening credits were amazing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, just like the design they used in that sequence was unbelievable. Like the black and white, and then the little flashes of color here and there. I thought that was extremely well done.
Yeah, that in the end credits sequence where they just let it all hang out, and they did all these like parodies of various Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles covers where
Right.
they'd have like where they'd have a specific cover to a Turtles comic, and they'd put Batman or the Shredder in it,
Hmm.
or vice versa. They'd have like an iconic Batman cover, and they'd like manipulated so that it looked like the turtles were in it. It's just like, okay, like this could not be clearer that this is a love letter to both
Yeah.
franchises,
Yeah.
but particularly the turtles,
Yeah.
because yeah.
I remember one of them really jumped out at me was there was one of the covers was for Raphael, one of the micro series, and it was
Yeah.
the original cover was Raphael versus Casey Jones, but they
Mhm.
changed it to Nightwing using his original '80s costume.
Yes, yeah, I noticed that, and I'm like, okay, that's absolutely perfect. Yeah, that was the first Raphael micro series. Yeah,
Hmm.
the because back in the Mirage days, Eastman and Laird would have these like alongside their Turtle series, they'd have a number of different other comics that they do, and they'd have the occasional one-shot comic that would like focus on a specific
Right.
turtle, and the first one of those was Raphael, and they call those a micro series as a gag of like DC calling their one shots, or no, they're calling their like they'd have like mini series,
Right. Yeah.
of like 4 issues or 5 issues or whatever, and they're like, well, this is one issue, so it's a
Hmm.
micro series, just kind of leaning into the gag of that. And yeah, the
Right.
first one of those was a Raphael micro series that was the first appearance of Casey Jones.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And also the references too, I did notice as well, there was that reference, I think it was when the turtles first appear, and it's very much evocative of the original animated series opening credits.
Yeah, there was a shot where they were standing on
They're all on the roofs. Yeah, yeah. And it's
yeah,
just like
standing on the roof, yeah, like on like several different roofs on, and they're like, looking badass, and they're kind of,
mhm,
posing, and it's like, yeah, there's that exact one. And there's a shot at one point where Michelangelo was like deflecting things with his nunchucks the same way he did in the 80s cartoons
mhm,
opening. And yeah, they like, yeah, there was like so much staging that was like directly from animated series or comics and stuff like
right.
that. So yeah, they were, like I said, like this was such a fun love letter.
Yeah, and I really like the way they did the design, like the character design in this, the artwork. It's it's interesting because looking at it, like the turtles look amazing, but
Mhm.
and Batgirl and Robin also look really good. But looking at it, just the images at first, the first thing I thought when I saw the images of this, I'm like, I do not like their Batman design, but watching it, you completely forget about that. It actually works really well. But
Mhm.
the thing I especially liked about the turtles designs was the way they had worked in things that were kind of goofy in the original animated series design, like the letters, having their letters on their belt buckles.
Mhm.
I always thought that was kind of goofy in the 80s animated series. But they found a really clever way to work that in here, where it's just like the style of their belt loops just happen to resemble the letters. I thought that was a really clever way to do that.
Yeah, they I really do like the character designs that they had for the turtles. They made each one look visibly
Mhm.
distinct, not only in what they were wearing, how they wore their gear, also like body types. Each one had a distinctive silhouette,
Right.
back in 84 when they were first coming up with this franchise. Eastman and Laird, like didn't really think of like, how do you tell these characters apart? They
Mhm.
always knew which characters were saying what, even when, there wasn't the signifier of like what weapon they had,
Right.
you know and then, once it was being shopped around, for like animation, for the 80s cartoon, the people working on it were like, okay, we need to know who's who, and the
Mhm.
kids are definitely going to want to know who's who. So what can we do here? Can we
Right.
color code them? And like, I don't know whether this was like whether well, not this was intentional, but like the color coding ended up being kind of reminiscent of like Japanese tokusatsu,
Mhm.
like, if, before there was Power Rangers, and like and with stuff like, Voltron being a recent memory,
Mhm.
like there was a certain, color coding, alongside different weapons that worked for them. But more recent animation, more recent um properties dealing with the turtles have found different ways to make them visually distinct from each
Right.
other.
Yeah. Yeah. The 80s show, it was just basically the same character models for all of them, just different colors palettes.
Yeah, and
Whereas,
what that
yeah, I think the 2003 animated series, I think that was the first time that they had really made an effort to visually distinguish and use like different character body types and everything for each of the turtles.
that one not so much. Like the 2003 series, they like there's even a like on the character model sheets there was even a note that the turtles were basically depicted as like identical
Mhm.
quadruplets.
Mhm.
It's just their coloring would set them apart. But like I think the first one to actually um do this in terms of animation was like the 2007 TMNT movie, which I enjoyed quite a
Oh,
bit.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one definitely did a lot more with like distinctive body parts,
Mhm.
body types, like specifically, like definitely with Raphael. Making him the physically heavier, kind of
Right.
more
Right.
muscle bound
Mhm.
type, and because he's been usually depicted as like the brawler kind of type.
Mhm.
Most depictions of the turtles these days, make him look as huge as possible in comparison to his brothers. And usually these days, Donatello is like the skinny one because hey, he's the one who's like working with computers all the time. So I guess he doesn't exercise as much as the others do.
Right.
You know.
One thing I like is just the way they had Leo's swords, because having now learned more about the samurai and all that kind of stuff, like the fact that he had the swords on the back it's a very strange way of doing it, because they didn't actually wear swords on their back. So in this show though, they put it at the sides, which is how they traditionally are worn. So I thought that was a nice little touch as well.
Yeah, and that serves a number of purposes to me. Like one, it depicts Leonardo as more of a stoic samurai warrior type, because, well, let's face it, the turtles are called ninjas, but not a lot that they do actually like coincides with what a ninja would do. Like for instance, like in Dungeons and Dragons, recently with fifth edition, they have a race called the Turtles, which is like basically like humanoid tortoises. And I'm like, okay, I want to make a Ninja Turtle with that rule set. And like they have a ninja class of character, but I'm like, this doesn't fit with what like Ninja Turtles do. So instead I went with the monk class, because they have this they have this subset called the Path of the Kensei sword saint. So basically, you can like specialize a monk into like being trained with a specific weapon and going on this warrior path sort of thing. And I'm like, that fits Leonardo perfectly. So I'm gonna create this this turtle monk named Rio, which is as close as I could get to Leo, and just basically play Leonardo in Dungeons and Dragons, that sort of thing. But yeah, the idea is that like he fits more of like a samurai type than he does like a typical that he fits a typical ninja. And the other purpose behind having the swords at his side is that he doesn't have to reach them, because like I never understood why they were like strapped to his shells. Like, how would he reach them?
Well, also it's the nice thing too I noticed too is that the elbow pads are even reminiscent of samurai armor, like the cleaves on the samurai armor. It's very similar style to that. And just like those little touches I thought were really nice that they did here. And I think Leo's the only one that had that kind of thing, because I'm looking at some of these images here and it looks like Mike at least has just regular, smooth knee pads and elbow pads.
Yeah, they even did some differentiation on like I said, the way they're wearing their gear, or what kind of gear they're wearing. Like if you like Raphael, like I think instead of like just having like those like leather or cloth like wristbands that are often seen on the turtles, like his are just like these leather hand wraps.
In fact, I noticed that. I was going to mention the same thing. None of the characters have those. They don't have those wrist wrap things, except for Raphael, and it's almost like a boxer's taping.
Yeah. He tapes his hands like a an MMA fighter or a boxer or something like that. And that's something that a lot of recent depictions of Raphael have done, where like each of the turtles has such a vastly different fighting style from each other. You've got Leonardo, who's for obvious reasons, he's a samurai sword fighter. Michelangelo is kind of a break dancer a lot of the time, and he goes for like all kinds of like flashy moves and stuff like that. He will do like skateboarding and surfing moves while he's fighting, or like I said, break dancing, or just bust out Bruce Lee moves with his nunchucks. Donatello is a technical fighter, and like a lot of people are wonder why it is that the most high-tech turtle is the one with the wooden stick. And it's like, well, he's that's like it he can still do a lot of like technical moves with like very precise strikes with his bow, and a lot of like whirling around, like spinning it around, that sort of thing. And that fits his fighting style, where like he only fights if he absolutely has to, because he's usually, like the most pacifistic of the group. And then, then of course there's Raphael, who's the angry one, and he's the one who
Right.
gets into the most fights. So, like a lot of the inspiration for how he fights, particularly in like animation and in video games, is MMA fighter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so like he'll do like MMA and like Muay Thai kickboxing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought they did a really nice job differentiating those. Even like you were saying with when you're talking about Donnie too, I noticed that in some of these images, like his belt actually has like pouches and compartments and things like that, which is something that would make sense for his character to have more stuff to
Yeah.
carry around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always figured that like if you're going to go through the trouble of like drawing them with belts, put something on the belts, because they're not holding pants up.
Right. Right.
Over and above like just being ways to like stow their weapons, like occasionally they'll be depicted as like having throwing stars or grappling hooks, so
Right. Yeah.
pick them as like having places on their belt to store that stuff, makes
Yeah. Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So see what else I want to jump to. One of the things that really impressed me too was Troy Baker, who did the voice of Batman, but he also did the voice of the Joker. And
Yes.
I was watching this, and I was, because his Batman is, it's obviously influenced by Kevin Conroy, but it's not quite the same as Kevin Conroy's, and you could tell it's not Conroy. But even as Joker, like I was questioning whether or not that was actually Mark Hamill doing the voice of the Joker, because and then I had to go look it up, and I was surprised because when I saw that it was Troy Baker doing both of them.
Yeah, and I believe that was the same voice of the Joker from Batman Arkham Origins, because I know it was a
It
different
was, yeah, it
Joker.
was a different, it was a different Batman too, I believe. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if it
yeah,
was
I
Troy
think it was.
Baker who did it in that one.
I don't think it was Troy Baker doing doing Batman, but it was he said but he sounded definitely similar to that. But yeah, it was but yeah, the Batman and Joker in this movie ended up sounding very similar to the Batman and Joker from Arkham Origins, who in turn were intentionally, sounding similar to Conroy and Hamill.
Mhm.
And yeah, I definitely like that. And I was definitely amazed that in this movie both Batman and Joker were the joke were the same voice actor. I'm like,
Yeah,
has that ever happened before?
yeah. I don't think so. I think this is the first time that it's been done. So yeah, you're right. Troy Baker did do the voice of the Joker, and he also did the voice of the Joker in the recent Long Halloween animated
Okay,
movie.
I still haven't
Um,
seen that.
I haven't seen that either. I'm waiting until they come out with the combined two-parter.
Makes
Um,
sense.
and then Roger Craig Smith was the one who did it in Arkham Origins.
Right, yeah, that's the name I was thinking of. It's like, okay, it's one of the voice actors who has like who's billed with three names,
Mhm.
and it's like something, and and it was and I had it down to him or Robin Atkin Downs, and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. So
Mhm.
what's the other one? And then so yeah, Roger Craig Smith. Yeah, it's that one. But
Yeah.
yeah, you did a great job, and yeah, um I like the voice casting. I like um the acting on the turtles, and I def and the different Batman villains, because they just brought out almost the entire rogues gallery just to let it all hang out. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. They did the voice actor. They were a really good job, and especially brought back Tara Strong as Harley Quinn as well. I noticed.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I like her Harley Quinn. Not like a lot of like it seems like not a lot of people do, because a lot of people prefer Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn, which she was definitely the first one, and she defined the character, and she was also the voice that Paul Dini had in his head
mhm.
when he first conceived the character. But at the same time, like having played Batman Arkham Asylum, which I believe was Sorkin's like last role, like it seemed like that was kind of like labored on her part, and like her voice was like had gotten too gravelly for it, and like no offense at all intended
Mm,
for Arlene Sorkin, but it's just like but I think it was one of those cases where the writing was kind of on the wall, that like she just couldn't keep doing this, and Tara Strong, I think, was a good successor, because she can go into that audio quality as Harley Quinn, and be the right kind of
yeah.
playful.
I'm kind of surprised to hear that the people have something against Tara Strong, because I've always thought she's done a great job.
Yeah. Like I just heard some negativity toward that, and I guess it's just you know they prefer Arlene Sorkin, or it doesn't sound entirely right, but
It's just typical fanboy bitching type stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I don't take it too seriously, and like she's already had a number of voice actresses, as Harley Quinn, to begin with,
Hmm.
Hendon Walsh and a few others, a couple of actresses from Big Bang Theory, etc., and they've all had various,
Oh yeah,
roles.
yeah. What's I'm trying to remember her name. Katie or Kaylee?
Katie Coco.
Yeah, yeah. She's great on the Harley Quinn animated series.
Yeah, and a friend of mine has been like, just hounding me to watch that show, and I'm like, it's on my list, I
It's really
promise.
good. It's definitely
Yeah,
worth a watch. It's a lot of
yeah.
fun.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah, I should definitely make time and catch up on that, because I have seen clips of it and all that, and I do think it's a lot of fun what it is they're doing. Like, I especially like her as Harley Quinn, and I especially like the Killer Shark, or what's his name, King
King
Shark,
Shark. Yeah, yeah. Oh,
King Shark.
he's amazing. He's one of my favorite
Oh
characters on the
yeah,
show.
he is absolutely hilarious. And I like how recent depictions of King Shark have just like leaned into how absurd the talking
Hmm.
shark is, and whether it's the Suicide Squad movie that's coming up, that just has Sylvester Stallone being like, and
Exactly. Yeah,
or
yeah.
just this really comedic take on King Shark, or Gail Simone writing the character in what was it, Secret Six, and just be like, I'm a shark, 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 I'm a motherfucking shark, which a podcast that I had listened to years ago had guessed that that particular line of dialogue was meant to be sung in the William Tell overture, and Gail Simone actually confirmed it, because a lot of people were like, how, what, I'm a shark, I'm a shark, I'm a shark, I'm a shark, I'm a motherfucking shark, what? But no, apparently it was it was supposed to be read as in the tune of the William Tell overture, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, that doesn't knowing Gail Simone, that does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, and stuff like that, I like that kind of really fun quality, because particularly with stuff like Batman, particularly stuff with Ninja Turtles, because
Hmm.
I just like I can kind of get behind some of the dark stuff, but to a point. I think stuff like Batman the Animated Series was kind of about the right balance, that that it would need to be, where there's a
Right.
lot of serious stuff going on, and it's treated seriously and all that, but at the same time, at the drop of a hat, it can lean way into Warner Brothers cartoon stuff, and there's a lot this acknowledgement that yeah,
Right. Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is silly stuff. And same with the Turtles, where there's a lot of complaints in the fan community that various cartoons and comics just aren't dark enough, and it should be
Hmm.
a lot more dark and bloody, because back in the day, the Mirage comics were really dark, and there's and the turtles would kill people, it's really bloody and stuff like that. And I'm like, you do realize that this stuff, that their overall intention was to be as goofy as possible, right? They
Yeah.
weren't just
They were
leaning,
parodying a lot of that stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
And
they were leading into the stuff that they loved about comics, which was making this as silly as possible.
Mhm.
And heck, the very inspiration behind the Turtles was Eastman and Laird playing with each other, because they lived in the same house, and they watched a lot of like bad TV together, and
Mhm.
they had this game called Dueling Sketches, where Kevin Eastman would pester Peter Laird while Laird's watching television, usually,
Mhm.
cop shows like Law and Order, or stuff like that they were watching in the 80s, or
Yeah.
whatever they had to watch in the 80s, like cop shows, ninja movies, stuff like that. And Kevin Eastwood was like, had this idea, based on martial arts movies, like, okay, what is the dumbest animal I could possibly draw as Bruce Lee? And
Mhm.
so the idea of like drawing a bipedal turtle with like nunchucks strapped to his arm, meant to be a martial artist, like that just cracked him up. So he scribbled that on a napkin and handed it to Peter Laird and said, "Hey, look, this is the Ninja Turtle." And apparently Peter Laird just like that cracked him up. And their Dueling Sketches game was basically a game of yes and, to use
Yeah.
an improvisation term, where it's like, okay, I'm going to draw the same thing but then add something to it. And
Right.
so he drew like I think it was either like more, he drew like four of them, or he just like drew more than one and just like tossed it back. And then like they just kept going back and forth, and then
Right. Right.
adding to the name Ninja Turtles, it'd be like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just to make it sound even sillier.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then they were just like cracked up by this idea. And then they're like, okay, what do we do with this, because we really want to draw this. And
Mhm.
like they were just, and so they thought that they had this potential for a comic book series. And then it's like, what do we do with this? So
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
like threw in everything that they liked at the time about comics. Not only the comics that Frank Miller was doing at the time, which was like Ronin and Daredevil and Dark
Right.
Knight Returns, stuff in that era, but also like Jack Kirby comics, because that was how the two of them first made friends. Was
Mhm.
they were both like struggling artists, commercial artists on the East Coast. And like a friend of a friend introduced Kevin Eastman to Peter Laird, being like, well, those two is like, here's an artist I know who
Mhm.
does like artwork for this newspaper. So here's his contact info, maybe you can have a conversation with him. And so he did, and they hit it off immediately, talking about Jack Kirby comics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like after a while they moved in together, and they just became this like team.
Mhm.
They started they did various like independent comics. Like there was this series called that they did called Gobbledygook, that
Mhm.
I think was their initial, was like the initial like anthology comic that they based Mirage Studios around, because
Right.
the Mirage was their apartment building, like
Mhm.
their studio didn't exist. It was just like it was just them, their apartment or their house, their like art supplies and like
Mhm.
drawing boards. That was it. That was the studio. So they
Yeah.
called it Mirage Studios. And their one of their first projects, if not the first project, was the Fugitoid, which
Right.
was about this robot, this scientist who had this robot helper that, due to this like freak accident involving lightning, got his consciousness like transferred into the robot.
Mhm.
And this robot was then a fugitive of this like fascist military outfit, and was labeled a fugitive, or
Right. Which
a
ended up
fugitive.
having they did, and they ended up having the turtles cross over with that as well in the
Yeah, and
comics.
because they were like because once they got the Turtles line, the Turtles comics going, they were doing, they were bringing in more and more Jack Kirby
Mhm.
influences. And so it's like, well, why don't we have him meet the Fugitoid? the comics where they met the Fugitoid was like that was my first experience. That was my first exposure to the Turtles comics, or at least the Mirage comics,
Yeah.
because First Comics had put out these these full color collections of the early comics, and at the time I was getting into comics in, I believe it was, yeah, it was 91 because I was 12, and I was in um yeah, I was in school, like, and in homeroom I had there's a friend of mine who started bringing his comic books to homeroom, and I was like, oh, those look cool. I want to read those. And so he'd toss them to me, and we'd read them in homeroom, and I would read stuff like, and so he had stuff like Batman comics and Captain America and Spider-Man, and when he saw that, like mine, and when I saw the book 2 of the Turtles collection, it was like, and that was after I had seen the 1990 live action movie, which was so much different than the 87 movie, right?
Right. Yeah.
So then
From the 87 series.
yeah, 87 87 cartoon.
Yeah, because
And
they based the movies. Eastman and Laird had a lot more control over the movie, from what I understand. So the movie was a lot more true to the comics in that sense.
Yeah.
So much so that in the sequel, when the studio had wanted to do Bebop and Rocksteady, and Eastman and Laird refused because they hated those characters.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, but we want this movie to be more like the comics.
Right,
so
right. So they ended up
we can create characters that are, for this movie, but we don't want to bring in Bebop and Rocksteady. And but anyway, yeah.
which
so
is this is a lesson Michael Bay should have learned, but that's another story.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't particularly mind Bebop and Rocksteady as characters in like movies or whatever, like particularly in the current IDW comic series, they're great. But
Yeah.
But anyway, the collection, that book 2 collection, like I had heard that the cartoon series was based on a comic book series that had come before it, but I had just assumed that it was like the cartoon. And then of course, like, alongside the cartoon was the Archie Comics series, that
Right.
Archie Comics was publishing, and that was very much like the cartoon, but kind of spun off in its own direction. So I'm like, okay, so it's like that. And then I got this collected edition, and I'm like, oh, okay, because then I saw how the then I saw how the live action movie was kind of a hybrid between the cartoon and the comic book series. I'm like, oh, this makes sense now.
Right.
Now I understand why the turtles looked like that in the movie. I understand. Okay, this makes sense now. This makes sense now. Okay, this is weird, but it also makes sense. And so from then on, I like the 1990 movie had already been this transformative experience to me, because I was just like, oh, this is a much different version of the Turtles than I was used to. And
Yeah.
then I was like, and then it just became like, and then I just wanted, and then it just became like, it started overshadowing the cartoon to me, and then like seeing the collected edition of the Mirage comics, I was like, oh, this is actually what that was supposed to be in the first place. Okay, I want to look more into this. And so I just kind of like lean more heavily into that. And around that time, the cartoon was getting, further into its seasons and kind of like rolling downhill in terms of quality. So I was just kind of like becoming less and less interested in that. And Turtles became this franchise that, in a weird way and in an accidental way, was kind of growing up with me, because as I was like aging out of like some of the more kid friendly stuff, I was discovering, some of the some of the stuff that was like aimed for like an older, like, independent comics sort of audience. So I'm
Right.
like, okay, this is more interesting.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I never got to the point that like some Turtles fans I've seen where they're like, Turtles should be like violent and edgy,
Mhm.
and they're ninjas, so they should be killing people, and there should be like boobs everywhere and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, it's like
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
like this should be like, regardless of what kind of tone you have, like this should be playful and fun in at least some way. And
Right.
like just like even when you're going through like serious stuff with the turtles, like just the fact that this, that the serious drama is being acted out by these mutated turtles that have hands like Nightcrawler, and
Mhm.
like and for some reason, we're supposed to accept they're ninjas, but they wear like these, bandanas with eye holes in them and stuff like that. Like even at their most serious, there is this like, uh playfully tongue-in-cheek, aspect to them.
Oh yeah,
And,
absolutely.
like I kind of gravitate to, that version of them. And I have absolutely no interest in who the turtles are killing at any point. I'm
Mhm.
interested in how they live.
Yeah, yeah.
I like you know when they're like, having fun with each other, when they're like being siblings, when they're having arguments with each other,
Mhm.
when they're being like introspective, like when they're like living out on the farm in Northampton, and like and kind of chilling out that way, or when they're making friends with humans or aliens or
Mhm.
whoever else. Like they adopt basically everybody they meet,
Yeah.
given half the chance. I mean, like I kind of like the found family aspect of the turtles,
Mhm.
where where they were adopted by their father, who was a rat, and they make friends with humans, and while they get into fights with like various people who like cross their paths, they're also more interested in making friends, like they made friends with this like violent vigilante with a hockey mask on his face, and he mellowed out, from being around them,
Right.
that kind of thing. So I like stuff like that. I like
Yeah.
how they live. And now it's and I realize that I might be talking way too much, but
No, you're right, and that's some of the best adaptations of the turtles. They managed to find that balance because the because if you look back at the '80s series, it's not that good. It's actually pretty bad. It's just it's
the comic series or the
no, I'm
cartoon.
talking about the animated series.
Right, yeah.
It's really not that good. It's the turtles don't have much differentiation in their personalities. It's very just '80s, cheese,
Yeah.
animated cheese. But
Well, they
when
have oh, sorry. They do have like differentiation in their personalities, but also like without a lot of complexity to them is the way I've kind of.
there's some, but it's very 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 surface level. It's like it's
Yeah, yeah, like and it can basically be summed up
mm,
in the theme song,
exactly, yeah, yeah.
like
But if you look at like the 2003 series though, and the um the the first two live action movies, or the 2007 animated movie, or this movie as well, like they do a good job of having these serious aspects of it, but as well as still acknowledging the fact that it's a pretty ridiculous concept that they're working with.
oh
And
yeah, yeah, like a good like illustration of that was in the first movie in 1990, where they were
mhm,
where like one of the early scenes is Master Splinter, trying to like calm them down after they've just had their first topside fight, and they're all like, yeah, we've had our first battle, and like they have all this like teenage hyperactivity, and he's like, and he wants to like lean them in meditation, and like Michelangelo is off to the side ordering pizza, and like
mhm.
he just gets them all calmed down. He closes
Hold on. You just cut off.
Oh, I did.
There you go.
Testing,
Now you're
testing.
back. Now you're back.
Okay, yeah, we hear a record scratch, and his eyes just like widen as like we hear tequila on a record player, and the turtles are dancing to that, and they're like, well, this is like meditation,
Right.
and,
Yeah.
it's that kind of thing, and I think one of the reasons that movie was such a mind-blowing experience for me was because that was the first time I thought of the turtles as brothers with Splinter as their father, because that was actually stated outright at various points, and they had like the entire plot of the movie like centering around that. The idea that like in an early scene, Splinter was like, I may not be here. You will have to fend for yourselves. And then that became the plot of the movie in a way I wasn't expecting. It's like, oh no, they have to figure out how to like fend for themselves and how to be a family without him in a very sudden sort of way. And that was in contrast to the '87 cartoon where like, I mean, they were like, I kind of got the sense that they were kind of like kids who all grew up on the same block, so to speak. Like they weren't necessarily brothers, but they spent all their time together, and they were just like kids who like play together in the same block because that was a point of reference I had growing up with with kids who lived on the same block. Like it was that sort of thing. And even in that cartoon, Splinter would be constantly, referring to the turtles as my sons, but like for some reason that like I never really got the sense it was anything more than like he was their sensei and not so much their father. And then the live action movie just made that explicit, and then I couldn't unsee it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And so like that just became the version of the turtles that I saw. And I do like, getting back to this movie in particular. They made sure to include that as an element to the story. And there was this contrast in how the Bat family operates and how the turtles operate, because Batman and his sidekicks, they are a family, and but in a way that like it's kind of implied but not so much stated outright, because like Batman is kind of the father figure, but also like Alfred is the grandfather, and then his kids are the various Robins and the various Batgirls, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And only recently did he have a Robin who is his like biological kid, and and then here he comes along and he's this like utterly entitled little shit who's like my mother's Talia, my father's Batman, so this is my inheritance. I'm gonna be. It's like I am Robin, and then like the other Robins, former and otherwise, are just looking at him like, no, that's not how this works. You have to earn this, and also you're being insufferable right now. Quit it. And also that's something else I like about this is about this movie is the depiction of Damien, because like he is so hilarious in this movie as this little kid who was just basically affronted by everything around him, especially the turtles' very existence. He's and I love Michelangelo's like first exposure to him, where he's like perched on top of the Tyrannosaurus Rex in the Batcave while wearing one of Batman's like cape and cowl combos, just like basking in how awesome everything is. And then Robin shows up and is about to kick Michelangelo's ass, and Michelangelo's response is, "Ah!" It was so funny. And then like and a short fight ensues, and then like Michelangelo just like ends up like basically sitting on Robin with his like head and limbs like tucked into his shell, and Robin's on the ground like kind of throwing a temper tantrum like, get off me.
What I especially liked about those is that the contrast between them, and because of how similar those characters are in their upbringing. Like they're both raised by these martial arts masters, except the difference is that the Turtles had each other, and they also, Splinter actually loved them and cared about them enough to let them be kids, whereas Ra's al Ghul did not have that same thing with Damien, and that really came through very well, I thought. Whereas like Damien is, you see this kind of like struggle with him. He's a kid. There's a part of him that wants to be a kid, that wants to goof off, but he's got this lifetime of upbringing and discipline. So that even so, like at the end, I love that scene at the end when Batman reveals that he bought pizza for everybody, and then all the Turtles, just jump. They start digging in, and then Damien's got this kind of wistful look on his face, but he's trying to hold himself back, and then Batman gives him a slice of pizza himself, and just like gives him permission to be a kid for the first time. I thought that was
or that scene where like Michelangelo is in the Batmobile and just having the most ADHD freak out possible as he's like pushing every button, and then in the distance Robin is watching like all kinds of like fireworks and projectiles just pour from the Batmobile. It's like, I wanted to push all the buttons. It was so funny. And I love the just the kind of like low-key bromance that Damien ends up having with Raphael, where they're just kind of like they're just kind of like off to the side, just kind of like wordlessly, just kind of like chilling, and Donatello and Batgirl instantly hit it off, and because they're off to the side, at the science lab, coming up with a retro mutagen and debating the appropriateness of the term ooze, and then like when they show off their results, it's like, it's perfectly safe, so don't worry. And then Batgirl's like, maybe worry a little, because there's still a chance you could die from this. And then like Damien and Raphael are like, no, get that away from me. And Damien's like, I agree with the turtle, stand over there. It was
and there's the other little reference to the Batman comic books with Oracle saying, or Batgirl saying that her screen name is Oracle.
Right. Yeah, I did notice that. And like I was actually surprised that they didn't do the gag of Donatello's screen name being like being Does Machines 84, because that's what it is in the IDW comics.
Right. Yeah.
But they did the Does Machines gag elsewhere in the movie, so I guess they didn't want to repeat themselves with it, so they gave them like I think it was, what was it, like Bo Staff fan or something like that?
Bo Staffs are awesome, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so yeah, they but I was just thinking that gag was like right there, because that was a gag that they've used previously, and they're not shy about this sort of thing. But
I also love the post-credit scene where you have it, which is kind of a nod to the second live action movie with Shredder being infected by in this case it was the Joker's venom, but in the second movie it was the Ooze. So that was and also the little they kept the fact that he was scarred by Splinter, which came from the first movie.
Like a lot of depictions of the Shredder have that facial scarring, which I think might have actually started in the I could be wrong, but it might have actually started in the 1990 movie.
I believe so. Yeah,
because I don't think that was a thing previously, and like it certainly wasn't in the 87 cartoon, because he would take off his faceplate on a semi-regular basis, or every once in a while, and he'd just be this Japanese guy with an unscarred face. And but yeah, like they
voiced by Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince.
James Avery. I'm sure the look on my face was priceless the first time I found out it was the same actor. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But he did such a he was so memorable in that role, and he brought so much like comedy and nuance to it, to the point where it was actually kind of a disappointment in the uh in the 90s and 1991 movie where like Shredder had like the deepest, most intimidating voice possible. Money cannot buy the honor you have gained here. And it's just like, okay, great. Although I will say, I did think it was kind of funny, the bit where it is like the Foot Clan are your family. I am your father. And it's like, okay, yes, we know you're leaning into Darth Vader here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we get it. We get it.
Okay. So I think that's about or about the end of time we have for today. So do you have any final things you wanted to say about this movie?
Okay, final things about this movie. Let's see. Something I didn't touch on was the martial arts choreography, which they spend a lot of time and care on. Like they had an entire bonus feature documentary on it about the way they staged the martial arts, and a lot of the thought that they put into it. That was really cool. Like I think one of my I think my all-time favorite thing that they did in that movie was like the one-on-one sword duel between Leonardo and Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah.
That was just freaking cool, because that was like samurai swordsmanship versus European and kind of and South Asian fencing and stuff like that. And they even included a thing which and they even included like Leonardo actually stepping on Ra's al Ghul's foot to break his stance, which is something ninjas have been known to do, where they'll confronted with a more rigid and formalized sort of style, they'll just be like, okay, how can I like upset this stance that you have? I'm going to step on your foot. That was a fun touch. So yeah, I liked a lot of the choreography that they did. I really like the animation. Something that I did think, I think my one complaint about this movie was the fact that they kind of brought out the levels of gore and violence from other DC animated movies. There was at least one beheading, and there was some gore and stuff like that, and it's just this I appreciate that this is kind of the thing you do these days, WB animation, but this is really flying in the face of the rest of this movie. It sticks out like a sore thumb. It's you didn't need to have beheadings and stuff like that in this movie, and especially because kids are going to want to see this movie. They're going to want to see this this very cartoony animated movie of the turtles teaming up with and fighting Batman. And also I really did like the what do you call it? Oh, the Batman's rogues gallery that had been all mutated into animal hybrids. They had a lot of fun with that. It was really cool. And they're even doing something similar in the current comics that are published by IDW. There's this storyline that's basically Mutant Town, where there was this kind of terrorist attack with this mutagen bomb that was set off at a political rally, and it ended up releasing releasing mutagen in this cloud format that ended up blanketing the east side of New York. And sorry, and I will wrap this up, but they basically citizens of New York have become these animal hybrids, and it's this long storyline that they're doing, which I highly recommend people check out. But yeah, like this is one of my favorite things that has come out in the past few years, and I was I even submitted it for, like, I believe it was the episode 50 that you guys were doing.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
the audio commentary, just to see Derek Ferguson's like reaction to like this, and particularly the way Michelangelo experiences Gotham City, and so
yeah. I think Derek would have gotten a kick out of this movie. Because I remember we did do the first Ninja Turtles movie, and he ended up finding a lot of things he liked about that, and he also likes the more lighthearted depictions of Batman and like the Brave and the Bold and stuff like that. So I think he would have, if we had ever gotten around to doing this before he passed, he would have definitely gotten a kick out of this movie, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And all right, well, that should be about it for me. So I'm not going to take up any more of your time.
Yeah. Why don't you tell people where they can find you online?
Okay. I am on Twitter at HR Streaming, and that is a that is a reference to a YouTube channel that I have that was basically me. Well, I kind of still have it. I just haven't updated that in quite a while. But I was doing like reactions to stuff online, and also like video game playthroughs and stuff like that. And but I did that like a couple of years ago. But it's still on YouTube if you want to search for that. And also another thing to plug is I'm still doing fan fiction of Marvel superheroes, and it's a fan fiction community called Marvel Crossroads, and it's marvelcrossroads.wordpress.com, and I've been doing that for a few years. I'm basically running the site, and I'm writing X-Men and Amazing Spider-Man and a few other things. So yeah, you can check that out.
Okay, great. Well, Dave, thanks so much for coming by, and I'll have to have you come back on another time to talk about something else.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to do that. So yeah, we should brainstorm. So
yeah. All right. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. SuperheroCinephiles.com is the website. Super Cinema Pod on both Twitter and Instagram. Please sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, use the contact form over on the website. Again, superherocinephiles.com. That does it for now. And I believe the next episode, we're going to have a guest on to talk about Black Widow. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll talk to you later. You have been listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Super Cinema Pod. Join our Facebook group by searching for Superhero Cinephiles, where you can interact with us and other superhero fans. If you'd like to support the show, you can become a regular supporter at Patreon or make a one-time donation through PayPal, both of which can be found at our website, superherocinephiles.com. If you buy or rent any movies through the Amazon links at our site, it helps support the show. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.